My brother tried to ruin the most important day of my life, my wedding day, so I uninvited him, which caused mass family chaos. I, female 26, have grown up in my family that's really close. We've always had a family tradition of playing pranks on each other. I'm the only girl in the family, and I have 4 brothers. 4 of them are older than me, and one, George, 22, is younger. George is the person who had caused a lot of problems within the family recently, and now I'm torn as I feel as though it's torn apart the family that's always been there for each other for years. I guess I should give you some context of the background, as if I just say my little brother planned to play a prank on me, and ended up becoming an outcast because I was so upset, does it make it sound as though I had a massive overreaction of the situation? As I said, my whole life it's been part of the family life that's, we play pranks on each other. And in my time, I've played some of my own on my own brothers. The problem with this particular prank is that it was much more malicious than any of the other pranks we've ever played on each other in the family. And we think it just made it worse. It was planned for my wedding day. To give you an idea of what kind of pranks we play, I'll give you a few examples. Once, when I was younger, one of my older brothers put paint in my shampoo bottle, and when I washed my hair, bright paint poured onto my head. Another time, one brother replaced another deodorant with glitter glue, and he ended up with sparkling armpits. As you can see, the pranks were childish and stupid, and no one ever really got hurt. The brother with the glitter glue deodorant did have to shave off all his armpit hair though, but that just made the whole thing a little funnier. My parents have always just shaken their head and assumed that we would grow out of it. To a certain extent we did, but we still play tricks on each other if we get the chance. Usually, we buy each other crazy presents for birthday or presents, or do something like replace their milk with mayonnaise. When I went off to university, I had a break from all the pranks while I was away, and when I told friends about my life at home, they seemed genuinely weirded out about the whole situation. I guess it's not normal for every family to constantly have to be alert for potential pranks. I have to be honest, it was a relief to not have to constantly check my shampoo and cosmetics to see if they've been replaced with something else. I laughed so hard telling my friend about the time my brother replaced my face cream with hair-removing cream. I had no eyebrows for weeks. Apparently, normal families would not think this was funny and would be furious. To me, it's just life. My best friend Ellie, 26 female, was extremely nervous when I invited her to come meet my family over one university break, but I reassured her that she would be fine, as we never played pranks on people outside of the family. If she ever married into the family, then that would be a totally different situation. She looked bemused that anyone would ever want to marry me or my siblings if it meant that they would be forced to live on the edge the whole entire time. I guess with hindsight that was understandable. However, this did not stop her starting to date one of my brothers, Carl, 28. They got together that holiday and have been together ever since. It's great having my best friend as part of the family, and in no time, she's gotten used to our ways. Ellie introduced me to my fiancé, Lance, 29, 2 years ago. He works with Ellie, and she thought that he would be the perfect man for me, and she was right. He's everything I would look for in a man. Handsome, kind, loves the outdoors like I do, and above all, has a fabulous sense of humor. We just clicked right away. My brothers were very protective of me because I'm the only girl, I suppose, and poor Lance had a rough time to begin with. However, it's a credit to his personality that he took all the pranks and jokes in stride. And on the anniversary of our first date, he asked me to marry him. I said yes, and we're getting married in 3 weeks' time. I should probably talk a little bit about my younger brother and how he's fitting into this story. As the youngest, George was seen as an easy target for my brothers. He suffered much worse than I ever did. My brothers did hold back a certain extent because I was a girl, and my dad would go mental if they ever hurt me. However, Dad also has the mentality that boys will be boys, and that by pranking each other, they were just helping to toughen each other up and build character. Looking back, it was borderline bullying, but as I said to us, it was just normal family life. For my part, when my older brothers were tormenting George, I just looked the other way, as it meant that they were not tormenting me. Maybe this is some of the reason that things went the way they did recently, but I don't know if all I can do is deal with the fallout. George grew up subjecting us to much crueler pranks than anyone else did, and he did not restrict it to just family. He would torment everybody. At school, my parents, they were constantly getting phone calls about his behavior, and he had a few friends as the other kids lived feared of his pranks. The only friends he made were boys who shared his cruel streak, and they formed sort of a gang of children who were disliked by a lot of people. My dad tried really hard just to sort George out. Nothing seemed to work, so he kinda gave up and just left him to it. I always thought that there was a strong chance that one day George would go too far and end up in prison. During the wedding preparation, there were a few pranks from everyone as we went. Silly things like fake emails suggesting my wedding dress was not going to be bright pink, or that our honeymoon had been changed to somewhere awful. They were so obvious, I was able to laugh them off. When we got closer to the date, my mom put her foot down and told the boys just to stop. I also had words with my eldest brother to say the wildest. I accept that it was common for boys to have fun at the expense of the groom on the stag night, but I would be furious if anything happened to Lance. My brothers said that they would not do anything that would cause Lance any harm or spoil the wedding. I know my brothers love me, so I never doubted them at all. I did not take George's personality into account, though. Well, after things had died down, my mom and dad questioned whether they missed something in George's behavior and should have gotten him help when he was much younger. My mom was distraught and blamed the pranking culture of the family on the fact that she missed what was potentially a serious problem with their youngest son. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. In the run-up to the wedding, we were insanely busy. I have a large family, and so we had a huge venue booked. Accommodation for plans of relatives traveling from further away and vendors to deal with. I was lost in preparation and did not pay a lot of attention to what was happening around me, as long as everyone and everything were where they should be on the day of the wedding. I would be happy. Luckily, Ellie was paying attention. Having been with my brother for such a long time, she was not entirely convinced that they would be able to control themselves and not full on some stunt before the wedding. She did not think they would do anything on the actual day, though, but she was keeping an eye on everything, and for that, I will love her forever. It was Ellie that realized George was acting shady and seemed to be spending a lot of time huddled around his friends. Usually, we would just leave them to it as there was little we could do, but with my wedding being so close, Ellie was worried. She went into detective mode, and the information she found out knocked the wind from my body as she told me. She called a meeting with myself, Lance, my parents, and brothers. George was out with his friends, so we could talk without him. The fact that he was not invited told us before we even sat down that whatever the meeting was about, it has something to do with George. I assumed he was planning a prank, and so I wasn't too worried as it was easy to deal with. Little did I know that it would set in motion something that almost overshadowed my entire wedding day. Ellie told us that she had overheard George on the phone with his friends. Although she did not hear the full details, she heard them discussing buying paint and water pistols, which seemed suspicious this close to the wedding. There was also talk about things going missing and spiking some drinks. I was upset and looked at my family, saying that they've promised me that there would be no pranks to spoil my wedding. Then things got a bit weird, as Mom decided that it was not definite that George was talking about the wedding. After all, it was still a little while off, and we all knew that he was notorious for planning things with his friends. It could easily have been something totally unrelated, and we were just jumping to conclusions. I was amazed she could be so naive and defend him. I said that I was not happy and someone needed to talk to George, or he would be banned from the wedding just to protect Lance and me. My mom promised that she would talk to him, and I needed to stop being a bridezilla, as not everything revolved around my wedding. I did not need arguments with Mom this close to the wedding, so I just agreed she could talk to him, until I had proof. He wasn't planning on firing paint at me on my wedding day and ruining my dress. He was off the guest list. I think I maybe have overreacted a bit at this stage, but I've grown up with him and I know what he's capable of. So for now, I've been seen as the bad guy for pre-banning my younger brother for a prank we're not even sure he's going to plan. Does that make me a bad person? I'll wait until Mom's spoken to him and then I'll update you guys when I know. What's up guys, Mr. Reddito here. So this story is about to get really deep. There's multiple updates, and this first update, it takes place exactly 2 weeks away from the wedding. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing for more stories like this, and let's hop into update number 1. We're now 2 weeks away from the wedding, and what should be the happiest day of my life has turned into a family fight because of my stupid, selfish little brother. I'm so angry I could not even bring myself to update this post until I calmed down a bit just to type without cursing everyone I know. So briefly, this is what happened from the time of the family meeting until today. My mom did what she did and said that she would have a talk to George, who denied everything and went as far as to say Ellie was making things up to get him into trouble, as everyone always thinks the worst of him. I wonder why. Maybe because he's always doing really mean things to people his whole life. I wish I could say that I took that as the end of the matter, but I was not as ready to believe him as my mom apparently was. I talked to Lance about it and said that I was still really worried about it. Lance agreed, as he has been a part of the family long enough to know George is trouble. That's an awful thing to say about your baby brother, but at times I find him really hard to like. I mean, I love him, he's family, but I don't like him when he's acting out. Ellie was sure of what she heard, and she had a talk to Carl, who agreed that our younger brother was out of control at times. Maybe it's because he's the youngest and felt he needed to compete with his older siblings, but George had never been happy unless he was the center of attention, and obviously, at my wedding, Lance and I would be the center of everything. I always thought that George liked the least of all siblings, but I thought I was imagining it. Lance suggested it was because, as the only girl, I was close to my mom, and George was indeed a bit of a mommy's boy, so he was jealous of my relationship with Mother. However, I think that the fact is my mom's refusing to hear a bad word at the moment about George says that she does favor him. Anyways, the four of us set about watching George and keeping quiet about it until we found something we could show my parents, to prove that he was indeed planning to ruin the wedding. I was adamant that he was not coming, but Lance wanted to play it safe and not make things worse by banning him just yet. It would look bad as we banned one of my brothers when he was actually innocent, right? I didn't believe he was innocent for a second, though, but I went along with Lance as I love him, and I do trust his judgment as it has a very clear mind. Over the last week, we've watched and listened as much as we can to George. It's been hard because he's aware we're watching him like a spy. I do not understand why he wants to hurt me, but I'll not let him destroy my favorite day. For almost a week, we found nothing. He was an example of a perfect little brother. He helped with our organization, picked up things we needed, and turned up for all the suit fittings. Even I began to worry I indeed overreacted. But, guys, and we found it. The proof that we needed. He was not the misunderstanding angel Mom seemed to think he was. He left his phone in the living room whilst he went out, and Carl managed to crack his password. It was a stupid mistake on George's part, but now we had the proof we needed. Carl copied all the information, and we were able to provide my parents with the proof I needed to ban my brother from being anywhere near my wedding. In other situations, I would have been impressed at the amount of planning George and his friends had put into their plan. I said to Lance that if George put the same amount of dedication into university or work, he would be hugely successful. It turns out, the original plan had been for his friends to hide in the bushes around the church. After the ceremony, when we come out of the church, they would fire the paint out of the water pistols at the wedding party. In the message, George had said that we should not complain as we were married, so we could get it changed before the party anyways. As if I would not be upset my expensive wedding gown was ruined by paint. Once my mom had spoken to him, the darker side of George emerged, and my heart's truly broken at the anger he seemed to have for me. He called me the pampered princess, the spoiled brat, and some cruel name in all the messages. He was also nasty about Lance and Ellie. He said he hoped Carl would dump Ellie as she was a snitch, and everyone knew what happened to snitches. This scared me a little bit, so I told Carl to watch out. Carl was furious as soon as all my brothers knew about it. I wish it was just the wedding he was planning to ruin, but once we were onto him, he seemed to go over the deep end. This is where I really think we began to think that he has mental health issues. The messages got crueler and crueler, and he threw out ideas for ruining everything from Lance's stag night to my honeymoon. I could not let this slide, so I sat down with my mom and dad. I showed them all the messages. My mom didn't want to believe it, but she could not deny the written proof right there in front of her. I told her that there's no way in heck that George would be coming to any part of the wedding. Reluctantly, she agreed that it looked like he would definitely have to exclude him. She asked for one more chance just to talk to him, but I said she could talk all she wanted, but I've made my final decision. George was not welcome to the wedding, and that was final. My dad was the one to tell George that we knew what he's been doing, and he went into full victim mode. He said that he had not really been doing any of it, and he was just venting with his friends because he was accused him of planning a prank. He argued that because we falsely accused him in the first place, he had, just to get rid of his frustration. Told his friends what we would have done if he had been going to carry out a prank. He never intended to do any of it, apparently. He was just hurt and angry at us. I did not believe one word that came out of his mouth, but my mom was torn. She begged me to give him another chance, but how many chances could I give him? I was so angry and upset that it appeared my younger brother hated me. In the end, Lance and I stood firm and told George that he was not welcome to the wedding. Whilst my parents were there, he played the hurt brother, actually managed to produce some tears. My mom cried and said the family would be disappointed to see a fight between us, and it was all very emotional. Finally, only George and I were left in the room, and any sign of tears were gone. I was chilled to the bone at the look in his eyes as he turned to me before leaving. He gave me this weird, cruel smile, and his eyes were like stone, and said, "Big mistake, princess. Now I'm your enemy, and just think how much trouble I can cause now that I have nothing to lose." 2 weeks before the happiest day of my life, I found my younger brother was basically a sociopath. I'd been so happy and looking forward to my day, but now I was dreading every minute of it. George was right. I could ban him from the wedding, but it was a free country, and he was free to go wherever he wanted outside of the church and the hotel where we were having our after party. I tried to tell my parents what he said, but Mom was angry with me. She told me that I've managed to get my brother thrown out of my wedding and asked if I was trying to make it worse. I think deep down, my mom still believed that I should just accept George and all of his issues for the sake of the family unity. But that wasn't happening. All I can do now is hope and pray he was just trying to scare me and make me worry so much I would ruin my own day with stress. Wish me luck, I think I'm going to need it. What's up, guys? Mr. Redito. So update number 2 was just a short update. It's basically OP answering questions that everyone was asking in the comment section. Example, do I hate my brother? And other questions we'll get into. Let's go ahead and jump into this now, guys. And I'm going to tell you, update 3 gets absolutely insane. This is a short update to answer some questions I've been asked. Do I hate my brother? Absolutely not. He's my flesh and blood, and as I've said before, I'll always love him. But I can't like his behavior. Has there been anything in the past that would cause this amount of trouble between us? And I don't think so. I've played pranks on him as I have with others, but I've never picked on him particularly. It was just part of the family dynamic like I explained before. As my family's supporting me now, well, this is hard to say as my family's torn. Half the family seems to think that I'm right in banning him from everything as he's acting in a way that must not be supported. The other half seem to think we need to be working out why he feels the way he does, and working to find the resolve the problem so we can just be a happy family. There's been suggestions that it's not me that George has a problem with, but Lance. But I honestly can't see why that would be true, as Lance has been nothing but nice to George through the whole relationship. Will I ever be comfortable around George after this? I don't know. A lot will depend on how he behaves around me from this point on. Lance and I want to have children in the next year or two, and I'm scared that he'll prank them in a cruel way. Do I think that the prank culture of my family is weird and has a lot to answer for in this mess? Well, if you've asked me this last year, I would have said no, but now I think I would have changed my answer to resounding yes. Somewhere in the past, it's obviously affected George in a way that's led to this. And if I could work out what it was, I would try to find a way to make it right. Whatever happens, it stops here. I'll make sure my children are protected from the lifestyle I've grown up with, and will not talk to my brothers about ending it throughout the family. We're adults and need to act like it. I guess that's it for answers. Tomorrow's the rehearsal of the wedding, both at the church and the rehearsal dinner. George has been staying away, and I think the things he said to me when we were alone were just to make me scared. I refuse to let him ruin my wedding, and no matter what happens, I will enjoy my day, and I can't wait to marry the love of my life. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Reddito here. Strap your seatbelts in, grab your favorite beverage, and let's hit up update number 3, because things are about to get messy. So, this is going to be a heck of an update. So many things happened yesterday that I'm not even sure where to start. Maybe I should start with the conclusion, like a fiction novel, as it feels as though I'm living in a weird made-up story. If someone else was writing this, I would read it and think, yeah, right. But I swear on everything, I hold dear that what I'm putting in this writing is exactly what happened. Anyways, the final update. In the detailed account of how my younger brother decided to be extremely stupid and ended up getting arrested. The day started off just fine. We gathered at my parents' house ready to go to church for the ceremony rehearsal. We were all on high alert in case George showed up, but by the time we left for the church, there was still no sign of him. I'd been extremely anxious all morning, but as we drove to the church, I did begin to relax. I reasoned with myself that George had just been angry we had challenged him about his plans, and when I thought about it, I was able to make myself believe it's just been venting, and had not really been about my ruining of the dress. I mean, I was completely wrong in that assumption, but for the moment in time, it helped to believe it. So, I should probably say that we were living this quiet rule, and although it may seem like an irrelevant bit of information right now, it'll make sense soon. It was a lovely day, the sun was shining, and I felt happier than I have in a long time. Nothing was going to spoil this for me. It's funny how many times I could be wrong in one day. We get to the church. The priest talks us through how we would walk into the church and everyone would just be standing. We did a fake ceremony little routine so that we would know when to speak and what was expected during the ceremony. It felt strange knowing the following day I would be doing it for real. Just after the vows, we've heard a noise outside the church, but at the time did not think much about it. As I said, it was a rural area and the church was surrounded by farms, so it was normal for banging and loud noises occasionally. I saw one of my brothers glance back towards the door as if expecting trouble, but nothing happened, so he smiled encouragingly at me. I did not know at this point that all my brothers had checked on George over the last few days, and that morning when Carl had gone to the friends where George was staying, he was nowhere to be found. Carl and the others were not as sure as I was that George was not planning something extremely stupid. Everything went well for the rehearsal, and in hindsight, I think George decided that a prank inside the church was taking things too far. As we left the church, we realized that the banging had not been anything to do with the farm. The cars were covered in paint, red, like paint that they threatened to cover my dress in, and the tires were flat. On the front of my dad's car in black pen were the words, "Let the pranks begin." All the nerves and stress came rushing over me at once, and I ended up sitting on the gravel outside the church, sobbing as Lance and Ellie tried to comfort me. My dad and brothers were absolutely furious, and they were definitely trying to get George on the phone, but it was going straight to voicemail. When he checked his voicemails, there would be some interesting descriptions of his moral and personality by my brothers. There was no sign of George anywhere, and my dad phoned ahead of the venue, just to make sure everything was okay there. The manager reassured us that there's no sign of trouble, and he would make sure that the staff kept their eyes open. Lance and Ellie had managed to calm me down at the point, and the priest let us leave the damaged cars outside the church to be collected later, and he gave 2 of my brothers a lift to their homes to pick up their cars. Thankfully, George had not planned ahead and taken those out as well. By the time we arrived at the hotel, there was a real underlying sense of anxiety mixed with anger and disbelief. The staff went out of their way to reassure us everything would be fine. It wasn't, but in a way, what happened next saved my actual wedding. We were given a tour of the hotel, and we were shown where we would eat and where the evening party would be. It was already decorated, and it was beautiful, exactly how I had envisioned it. I walked around holding Lance's hand, taking it all in, and the hotel had arranged us a meal for us, which was the same as we would seat at the wedding reception. We were trying to whine, and that were the options for the table. And then, all heck broke loose. Have you ever heard the sound that chickens make when they are set loose through the large glass doors in the terrace of a hotel? No? You haven't? Well, it's loud. One of George's friends has chickens, well, his family does, and they're stuffing their chickens into crates and hid them in the lovely bushes around the hotel. From where they were lurking, George and his friends could see the moment we sat down with the patio doors open from a nice view of the large garden. We saw them coming, but there was nothing we could do as handful of chickens were thrown through the patio doors in feathers, a clucking herd. All I could see was my stupid brother leaning against the patio doors, tears of laughter streaming down his cheeks as the chickens ran around in panic. When I say they were everywhere, I mean everywhere. On the tables, under the tables, on the dance floor, mixed in with the noises of hens, was my dad and men yelling as they tried to shoo the birds out. I sat on my chair, did not move. At that moment, I hated my little brother with every part of my body. But there's kind of a happy ending to this story after all, because George did not think it through. He never does. What he did not know, the factor in his plan, was that he was just not spoiling my rehearsal. He was trespassing, causing criminal damage in a posh hotel, and the manager was not letting that slide. He called the cops. George and his friends were arrested immediately and taken away. The chicken's owner came and reclaimed his birds whilst apologizing for the stupidity of his son, and we helped clean up the feathers and bird mess as much as we could. The manager did assure us he would have it as good as new tomorrow for the real deal. All I could think, though, was at that point George would just ruin it again. However, the police charged George and his friends with criminal damage, and they needed to bail out to get out that evening. George's friends' parents rescued their sons, but George got left where he was. My dad said he would not bail him out until the wedding was over, and George could sit there and think about what he's done. So, there you have it. My rehearsal dinner was ruined, but my wedding was saved. Will I forgive George? Probably, but he'll be the black sheep for a very long time. If you feel like playing pranks on your family, take this as a warning that taking things too far can ruin your relationship with your family and, well, end up putting you straight to jail. So this is one of those stories where you're just like, I can't believe this is happening. I do have one question for you guys. If you were in this position and George, who put you through so much torment your entire life, even tried to ruin your wedding day, would you still forgive him in the long run, even though he's the black sheep of the family? Or would you do something different than OP and basically cut him off for good? Let me know your thoughts on that, guys. Drop it down in the comment section below. That's all the content for today. If you're not subscribed, though, just know, Mr. Reddito does daily stories, and you can come back every single day, and I guarantee there'll be a new story. Guys, have an amazing day, and I'll catch you in the next one.